Henry Ford was not the man who made America rich. He was the first modern architect to control human behavior. History books tell you he was an inventor, a visionary, a businessman. But the real story was different. Henry Ford's true genius was not machines. It was his ability to bind human movement to time, to turn thought into routine, to force will to surrender to a system. He did not build a factory. He built a behavior laboratory. And what was produced in that laboratory was not cars. It was obedient humans. Detroit, Ford Motor Company. The assembly line is introduced. History records this as a productivity revolution. But the truth was something else. Ford was not solving a problem. He was training a species, the human species. Because Ford understood something fundamental. When people are free, they are unpredictable. What is unpredictable cannot be controlled. What cannot be controlled cannot be scaled. And what cannot be scaled does not create wealth. The assembly line was not a machine. It was a prison of time. Each worker was fixed to a single station. Every movement was broken into seconds. Every thought was reduced to a procedure. The man could not think, because there was no time to think. He could not question, because there was no space to question. He could only repeat, repeat, repeat. And what is repeated becomes routine. What becomes routine becomes identity. And what becomes identity is under control. That order moved forward smoothly. Ford never gave the worker the luxury of knowing what he was doing. The worker was not building a car. The worker was tightening a bolt. He was only performing an installation. A man who tightens a bolt does not feel like a producer. He feels like a gear, and a gear does not object. A gear only turns. That is exactly what Ford wanted, to turn, without stopping, without thinking, without resisting. History called this scientific management, but its real name was something else. Behavior engineering, the control of human movement, the chaining of the mind to time, and most importantly, the transfer of will to the system. Then came 1914, and Ford made a move that shocked the world. He began paying his workers $5 a day, more than double the standard wage of the time. Newspapers called it generosity. Socialists celebrated it as justice. Workers believed it was salvation. But Ford was neither generous nor socialist nor a savior. Ford was a behavior architect, and $5 was his smartest weapon. Because $5 was not a wage, it was a leash. The more they received, the more they were conditioned to keep working. To receive the $5, workers had to follow specific rules. Their homes had to be clean. They had to stay away from alcohol. They had to take proper care of their families. They had to live in an orderly way. Ford's inspectors visited the workers' homes. They controlled their lives. $5 was not a wage. It was a contract. The worker was not only selling his time, he was selling his life, his behavior, his will, and it worked. Worker turnover dropped, objections decreased, productivity increased, but most importantly, obedience settled in. Ford understood something else. People were not lazy. They were simply uncontrolled. He took control. There was no such thing as lack of motivation. There was only lack of system. Ford's greatest machine was not the Model T. It was human routine. He understood that if a man woke up at the same hour every day, entered the factory at the same time, repeated the same movement for hours, and returned home at the same hour, that man became predictable. What is predictable can be controlled. What can be controlled can be produced. What can be produced can be scaled. And what can be scaled creates wealth. Now fast forward, 2026. Ford's factories no longer exist, but his system is everywhere, and it continues. Assembly lines have been replaced by algorithms, clocks have been replaced by notifications, factory bells have been replaced by screen brightness. But the principle is the same. Bind humans to time. Control their movement. Limit their thinking. Transfer their will to the system. Your alarm rings in the morning. You wake up. But did you really decide to wake up? You check your phone. Notifications appear. Messages. News. Did you decide to see them? No. You didn't decide. The algorithm did. You go to work. Hours in front of a computer. Emails. Meetings. Tasks. Did you choose them? No. The calendar did. The system did. You return home in the evening. You're tired. You look at a screen. YouTube. Instagram. TikTok. Did you choose what to watch? No. The recommendation system did. You just scroll. You click. You repeat. If Henry Ford were alive today, do you think he would build a factory? Of course not. He would design your mind, because real power is not controlling the means of production. It is controlling the means of attention. Real wealth is not producing goods. It is producing behavior. Real authority is not governing the body. It is governing the mind. The modern world abandoned visible chains because it discovered invisible ones. And here is the smartest part. You think this is freedom. Ford's workers could see their chains. Yours are invisible. And the question is this: are you using the system, or is the system using you?